Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the By Faith podcast. I'm your host. My name is Elizabeth Davis. I have my LaCroix. This is Cherry Lime. We're going to get right into it today. We have a press conference for the Keesee Indictment. So let's hop into it and get started with today's episode. My heart is pounding. We are about to watch Licking County officials give update on Keesee Indictment. And I read an article that stated that he has been charged with 27 counts. 11 counts of the R word. In addition to that, 11 counts of gross sexual imposition and 5 counts of sexual conduct with a minor. My heart breaks for this situation. I wanted to clarify something. I had a couple of comments, not a lot of comments, but just a couple of people saying, you shouldn't celebrate at the loss or at when he was arrested. A couple people commented saying like, oh, you shouldn't be celebrating this. You shouldn't be celebrating the fact that he got arrested. And I just want to clarify, I'm not celebrating the fact that his life is forever destroyed. God is going to have to intervene here and do a miracle to make this man have any kind of life again. And I don't feel happy that his family is probably hurting and that he is hurting. I don't feel happy about that. I feel happy that he has to face what he has done. And I feel happy that the victims will receive some justice through this. And I feel happy that he cannot hurt anyone else at this time.
Good afternoon. You folks ready? Good afternoon. I'm Licking County Sheriff Randy Thorpe, and here present with me today is Licking County Prosecutor Jenny Wells.
Good afternoon.
Captain Jay Cook, Captain Gus Moore, Chief Deputy Chad Dennis, and Chief Deputy Chris Barbuto. As many of you probably may be aware of, earlier today the Knox County Grand Jury returned a 27-count indictment against Gary Thomas Keesee, Jr. on various sex-related criminal offenses. I would just like to talk a little bit about the investigation, the process. Licking County received this case on February 7th. So over the period of a couple of months, these investigators worked hard, spoke to many various, I want to say, witnesses, victims, and the result is the indictments that were returned today. It's been a case that's drawn a lot of attention, but I just want to make sure everyone realizes that our focus is on the victims. That's what matters to us. The victims in this case, unfortunately, had to wait. It's my understanding that that there were victims that came forward as early as December. We received the case in February. There were a couple of agencies that looked at doing the investigation. They opted not to for their reasons. But when we were asked, we felt obligated, the churches in our county, and we felt that justice wasn't being served to these victims. So that was our purpose for taking the case. The indictments and the breakdown of that, I'll let Jenny Wells speak to that.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon. Thanks everybody for coming here today. I do want to commend the Licking County Sheriff's Office for their extensive investigation, which led to the case being presented today to the Knox County Grand Jury. They did a thorough investigation that took them to multiple states and led them to tracking down somewhere near 40 witnesses that they've interviewed. And this case is far from over at this point, but as the sheriff said, it was time for us to move forward with the information we had at this time and present the case. So today the Knox County heard testimony and did return that 27 indictment that the sheriff spoke about, involving 3 victims of sexual abuse who have come forward. These courageous young women have spoken out and come forward, and they are to be commended for their bravery and supported.
Amen.
They're very serious charges that we've considered and the grand jury voted on. 11 counts of rape, 11 counts of gross sexual imposition, and 5 counts of unlawful sexual conduct with a minor. And as I indicated, that the investigation is still ongoing, and we simply would ask, and I'm asking on behalf of the Sheriff's Office as well, that anyone who has any information or anybody who has been a victim, that they still can come forward and share that information with law enforcement so they can conduct an interview. So, I'm going to add this time. Any questions or anyone else?
So out of the victims, the 3 victims, with respect to what were their ages?
Sure.
When the alleged assault happened?
Sure. The victims' ages range from approximately 6 years of age to 15 years of age, and that includes, all 3. Some obviously were only 6 or 7. One was 10, and the other victim, it was a long term from approximately 8 until 15.
Have you connected any of the abuse to the church?
What does that mean? I'm not sure I understand. Have I connected any
Do any of
abuse?
the victims have any association with the church, and did any of the abuse have any relationship to what his job was at the church?
All of these victims that have come forward so far were members of the church at some point or another, having though grown up in the church since they were young. So there is no evidence that we received up to this point of anything occurring in the church or at the church.
I believe that there hasn't been any. Obviously, we can't sit here and say this has happened or that has happened when there's still so much that is being investigated. But I will say there's no way, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, please note, this is all my opinion. There's no way that Drenda and Gary didn't know. There's no way. So, I'm just disappointed that this is how the church is being presented in front of the world. But it's important that it is known, because there need to be policies put in place in churches across America and the globe. There's many of you here from other countries. I had somebody comment from Israel today, so God bless Israel. I pray for your country. This needs to stop. This can't happen. This can't be a predator's playground. The church is not a predator's playground. I'm tired of it.
At the time of with where the investigation stands now, is there a sense of how many victims are involved at this point, and any sense if any more victims may come forward?
As I indicated, we have indicted. The grand jury returned indictments on 3 victims, and those are that have come forward and disclosed sexual abuse.
Sheriff, you mentioned earlier how this is all about the victims. I mean, this is extremely hard to just read this indictment. What has this been like this last month or so? Talking to those 40 witnesses, talking to these victims, and investigating this case.
Can I let one of the investigators speak to that?
Like you stated. Step up to the podium, please.
Sure. As they stated, we were handed over the case. We began the initial interviews and then obviously speaking with the victims. It's kind of sad to say our part of this is easy. It's all about the victims. It's them retelling their story. So we tried to minimize, them retelling it. So again, the focus is on the victims and the hard part's on the victims.
Do you know any reason as to, why they chose to come forward now, and also if other people are talking about coming forward, if those witnesses that you talked to had some sort of relation to these victims? Do you know any connections?
As the prosecutor mentioned, they were all members of the church. This case is far from over. There are others we want to speak to, so I don't really want to comment on where we're going futuristically with the investigation.
And I would add, disclosure of sexual abuse is a very personal very personal decision. So the why is a very difficult thing to answer.
I have a question for Jenny Wells.
I'm glad the prosecutor said that, because you cannot tell someone how to process their trauma and how long it should take them and how long they should, like, it, especially when it comes to sexual crime. Why does it take so long? Why are they coming forward now, is what she said, something like that. I'm glad you don't know the answer to that. You don't want to know the answer to that question. You don't want to understand that. But at the same time, that's not a good question to ask.
So Tom Keesee was a minor when the abuse occurred?
Some of the charges that he's been indicted on did occur are during the time period when he was under the age of 18.
So in a prosecutorial sense, what happens there? Is he charged or prosecuted as a minor or as an adult?
Since he is over the age of 21, Common Pleas Court has jurisdiction on all those offenses. And so it just goes along with the adult charges as well. And then the court takes that into consideration at the time of sentencing, after trial. That's the only distinction.
Did you say there were around 40 witnesses that were spoken to?
I believe that's correct. Is that
the specific number then? Is that?
It's not exactly 40. It was around 40. I can't remember, 38, 42. I'm not sure, somewhere around there.
Do you believe that the abuse ended in 2011, or is there any concern that anything happened between 2011 to present day?
Based upon the disclosures from the victims, 2011 is the last information that we have of victimization.
The churches said that there were 2 suspects. Can you confirm this? That there were 2 people involved in sexual abuse allegations?
Lieutenant, you want to?
Yeah, I can comment on that. There has been allegations against 2 separate suspects. However, the only one we investigated was Tom. I believe Fairfield County Sheriff's Office is handling the other case.
Fairfield County?
I didn't know there was another
Based upon
case.
the information that was disclosed, that the acts occurred in Fairfield County.
Can you
of
talk
sexual
about?
abuse.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you talk about how his role at the church did it give him any access to these victims, and did his role at the church have anything to do with how he was able to victimize these women?
So I'm going to indicate kind of what my general thought is on sharing information, that the case will be tried in court and the evidence will be disclosed in the courtroom. I think based upon the disclosures from these young ladies, that his role in the church changed over time, and some of these offenses were occurring as a juvenile as well, when he did not have authority in the church. So,
Do the allegations in the Fairfield County case involve sexual assault as well?
I would refer you to the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office. We've done no part of that investigation. It just kind of running parallel with ours.
Jenny, what was his bond set at, and what's the next step?
bond has not been set yet. He will be appearing on Wednesday at 1 o'clock in Knox County Common Pleas Court for a bond hearing and arraignment.
Aw, Drenda's baby gotta sit in jail a couple more days. That's sad. Poor little baby. Her bestie boo ain't coming out today. Shoot.
Is there any reason he had to be arrested on Friday?
That was an investigative decision that we made.
Because some of these offenses took place when he's a minor, are there any other adults who could be charged in this case?
Again, I'll say the investigation is ongoing. We're just going to leave it at that.
Is he considered flight risk?
I would certainly make that argument that he is considered a flight risk.
Yeah, his family has millions of dollars. Yes, he's a flight risk. Have you seen him? He's tried to evade these charges for years. He is manipulated. His parents have manipulated the system for years. His mother is in politics, and they will do whatever they can, in my opinion, again, to get this man to not have to face what he has to face. They're crooks. Yes, he's a flight risk. If you don't know what a flight risk is, that means they get out of jail and then they disappear. Like they try to get away from everybody and like hide from the courts and the police. And to my understanding, my best understanding, that's what a flight risk is. So that's why they haven't set his bond. That's probably part of why he was arrested on Friday. And then he'll appear before the judge, I'm assuming, for his arraignment on Wednesday. Today was just the grand jury hearing to find out what they were going to charge him on. I might have some of that wrong. I'm not a legal expert. This is just from what I remember from working at the courthouse a few years back. And I don't have the best memory of all of that. So that's just what I remember.
Serious nature of these charges, one of which carries a 10-year mandatory to life in prison if convicted. So yes, I would say that.
What comes next for you guys?
Arraignment, Wednesday. As I indicated, law enforcement's still investigating, so they're still continuing to work on this case and do other things. But for court, it'll be the arraignment and the bond hearing on Wednesday, and then the case will be set for trial.
And will the trial take place here in Lincoln County? I know the grand jury was in Knox County, so we're going to keep it there.
It will be in Knox County, yes.
I had spoken to the source earlier on, and this might be for you. What's your name? I'm sorry.
Gus Moore.
Gus Moore. That a detective had been contacting someone about financial mishandlings from the church. Is that something that was a part of the scope of this investigation, or is that something that you're going to be investigating in the future?
As far as the financials, that was not our investigation. We did not go into that. Our focus again was on the sexual assault allegations. I know that there was some information given to us and it's been passed on to the proper investigative unit. But we are not currently investigating it.
Which unit would that be?
And we contacted the state with it, which, as you've seen, I believe they did an investigation in 22, maybe?
Correct. So it's with this Attorney General's office then?
We passed it on. Whether they reopened an investigation, I don't know.
Okay.
Will he be transferred to Knox County Jail, and if so, when?
Our understanding is we are going to be housing them in lieu of Knox County. So, no, he will be housed here.
Can you speak about how Lincoln County got to take the case from Knox County because the Attorney General won it?
Sure. Knox County Prosecutor Chip McConville contacted me and asked me if I would consider taking the case as special prosecutor, given that there was a lot of information surrounding the church being in Lincoln County, and the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office taking the investigation. I thought it'd be appropriate for me to take the case. So that's how it happened.
So you'll be handling it?
Yes.
Why were his parents subpoenaed? Why were Mr. Keesee's parents subpoenaed to appear before the grand jury?
That was a prosecutorial decision that I made to have them come in and give information at the grand jury. They had not made a statement to law enforcement at that time, prior to that.
Did they cooperate or plead the fifth?
I'm not gonna comment on that.
Huh, that's interesting.
Correct me if I'm wrong, went out of state and spoke to different witnesses. Are the 3 victims still here in this community in central Ohio, or have they?
Some of the victims have relocated to different states.
And I'm curious, did any of those victims talk to each other beforehand when all this started coming out? Did they know, hey, this was happening to somebody else?
I would say that all of these victims knew each other as children, and that's what I'll say at that.
You mentioned his parents. Has everybody else at the church been cooperative throughout this investigation?
We've spoke with many members of the church, and they've met for interviews, yes.
And were some of the witnesses former members, current members? Are you able to disclose that?
All the above.
Is he on any kind of suicide watch?
Is he on suicide watch?
I believe he is. He's on watch.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, again, we would urge folks, if you have any information, additional information relative to the current charges, if you've been victimized, we would certainly urge you to reach out to our office, and I can assure you that we will take care of it, and there will be a full investigation. So I just want to make sure we get that back out. So thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Looks like that's the end of the press conference. So because of the conflict of interest, if you didn't pick up on that from the prosecutor, due to the conflict of interest, that is why they changed the prosecutor. So the way the court system works, there's the local level and then there's the county level. So the local level has the same thing essentially almost as the county level. I worked on the local level, but just from my experience on the local level, I know a bit about it. And there's a county prosecutor, meaning that prosecutor is like the head of all the other prosecutors in that office. It's not the only prosecutor. They have, they call them like junior prosecutors, I think. And so there's multiple prosecutors in that office, but just like anywhere else, there's like the boss, which is the county prosecutor who has to be elected. I think probably because of his mom, that's why Licking County is handling the case because, you know, obviously there's a conflict of interest there, meaning people know each other. And typically when something happens in one county that could be a conflict of interest, another nearby county will take it. And sometimes the judge will rule out that for that to happen. Sometimes the prosecutor will pass it on like they did in this scenario. So it just kind of depends. Every case is different. Plus, I don't have like legal knowledge of why they may or may not do that. I just kind of know that that's how it works. So that would be why they took that. And it's for the best for everybody, for the victims, for the prosecutor, for the defendant, you know. That way there's no influencing going on that shouldn't be happening, if that makes any sense at all. So bond hearing will be at his arraignment on Wednesday. So he will enter his plea. Most likely it'll be not guilty because if he pleads guilty, then he will have to be sentenced in, like straight away pretty much. I have seen people be a little bit upset because somebody might plead not guilty when they're clearly guilty, you know, but to be honest with you, everybody in this country they have a right to a trial and to trial by jury. And so that is the goal for him to be able to get that. And if he were to plead guilty, then he would be found guilty pretty much on all 27 counts, most likely, or just depending if he would have to plead to all of them for him, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know. We'll see. It just depends. There's a lot of different things that happen with the case from the time that the charges are filed to the time of sentencing. And there's just a lot of different things that happen that the judge, they have different types of hearings. They have different, you know, hearings about his bond. So say he doesn't get released, he doesn't have a bond set for him to be able to post, which is, I think, highly unlikely unless they make part of a condition of his bond where he really can't post. There's just a lot of different things that can happen. Vanessa Johnson explains it way better than I do. I really only have like the bare bones knowledge. And again, I worked at the local level, not the county level, but I do know that it typically works pretty much the same way. There are a few differences, difference between misdemeanors and felonies. So Tom is being charged with multiple felonies. So it's just, there's a lot of different steps. It's not just, you know, go to your first hearing and then you plead guilty and then that's it. No, because then you have to go to jail or in this case, prison, and he could end up spending the rest of his life in prison. The goal is to get it if he's found guilty, it's to get the goal is to get as little sentencing as possible for the defendant. Now, in this scenario, it seems like, well, life in prison is definitely justified. Well, we haven't heard all the facts of the case. Let's just keep that in mind. I am not saying that I think he shouldn't go to jail for life. I believe that's what should happen. I think there's a chance that it could, but it doesn't mean that it will. So, you know, we just want to remember, we haven't heard all the facts of the case. It is still being investigated, and it is going to be probably quite some time between now and when the trial actually happens. And sometimes cases don't even go to trial, even if it's a felony. That doesn't mean that it's going to go to jury trial. I am 99% sure this case will go to jury trial, but sometimes it doesn't. It's just life. in the court is crazy. You just kind of never know what's going to happen. And so it's going to be quite a road ahead of us as we watch what happens. And we don't know what's going to happen. So I know that tonight, Ohio for Freedom, Everett is doing a live with Vanessa Johnson, and he's going to have 2 other guests on there that are involved with Faith Life Church. So definitely watch that video. There's going to be a lot more in-depth explanation, especially from Vanessa. She is a lawyer. She was a former prosecutor for child SA, so she knows the ins and outs of the court system and the law. She's very, very intelligent, very smart. And then I believe the 2 other guests were once very close to Faith Life Church, and so they have a lot to offer as well, a lot of insight that they can provide that I can't. I'm just an outsider. I live 2 hours away from these people and from the city, and I do not have any legal background aside from being a court clerk. So that's all I've got for you guys, and some of my commentary that, it doesn't make any sense sometimes, and I tend to ramble. But that's all I have for you guys. Thank you for watching. Keep this family in prayer. Keep the victims in prayer. This is going to be a very challenging road ahead of them as they go through this. And, I know he mentioned they don't want them to have to keep telling their stories over and over, but they are going to have to face it and see it and be in the same room as him, most likely, if they go to the trial. They may have to testify. There's a lot of different things that could happen for them. So keep the victims in prayer, because this is a huge, huge deal that they were able to come forward and have the courage to do this. It is not an easy thing to do. I don't know if I could do it if I were in their position. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode of the By Faith podcast. Adios.